conditions update from the Barres d'Ecrin and Dom de Neige. So, for the time of year, the snow conditions on the upper mountain are remarkably good still, providing you have an overnight refreeze of course. But all that snow in July has transformed into lovely squeaky nevy now, again if it freezes. But it's super warm at the moment, so freezing levels are well above the summits. It's probably double figures at the hut all through the night. But yeah, as long as the skies are clear and there's very little wind, the snow still freezes through radiative cooling. But yeah, you can't be attempting that now if it isn't a perfectly clear night, because the snow will just not freeze and is not viable if it's not frozen. The route at the moment takes the furthest right ramp. The middle ramp is too open, too crevassed and too broken, so that's not viable. But yes, you start far right, which unfortunately means that you are in the firing line of those huge seracs for a long time. But then once you're up above the first ramp, it cuts far left then. Goes quite far left, but you are for the most part out of the firing line of the seracs at that point. And then of course it's cut all the way back right again to get to the col if you're doing the Wanamale or the West Ridge, or indeed heading up to the Dom de Neige. So yeah, it's very much a convoluted S-shaped route at the moment. The Bergstrand, which takes you up to the col between the two summits, passes perfectly well at the moment, again providing there is a good refreeze. It's pretty sketchy on the way back down in the heat in the hot afternoon sun, so yeah, you definitely want to try and be up and down quick and get a nice early start. But yeah, there's no major issues on the Bergstrand as long as it is properly frozen. The kind of direct attack to the ridge, which is a bit further left, basically going up the north face to join the west ridge, that's all impassable. But the Bergstrand across the whole of the north face is impassable now. Further left, it is still just about possible to go up the east ridge, but again, some of the crevasses and Bergstrands there look pretty big as well. There are of course a number of big crevasses on the snow slopes which will hold your attention, but there's nothing which is drastically difficult at the moment. Nothing bigger than about a metre, so it's pretty easy to jump across up and down. But of course the biggest danger on the Barres d'Ecrin at any time of year is those huge seracs just towering over the route virtually the whole way up. So yeah, even though the crevasse risk isn't too bad at the moment, the serac danger is always there. And as for the approach up the glacier, you start off at the bottom of the approach to the hut on snow. So it's a very obvious track, like a deep trench basically now already. But then you quite quickly lose it in this mid-section, which yeah, it's not huge crevasses, but there are crevasses everywhere, which just make it a little bit convoluted, having to zigzag backwards and forwards to avoid the crevasses. A few hundred metres further up, you then rejoin the snow again. It's continuous snow then all the way upwards. So yeah, it's not too difficult to approach at the moment, but obviously more snow would be better. Relatively cool and damp July, the heat is back with a vengeance. The mountains are going into meltdown again. Through the second half of July and even into the first week of August, people were back skiing some pretty nice powder up on the Guy de Midi again. Indeed, it looked pretty damn awesome to be skiing at sunrise down the Midi Arête. I'm kind of annoyed at myself for missing it, to be honest. Woo-hoo! But any thoughts of skiing are now long gone. We're into our second intense heat wave of the summer. As of yet, it hasn't been quite as long or intense as the heat wave we had in June, but we're only really getting started again now. So yet again, freezing levels have been up above 5,000 metres across a fairly large swathe of the Alps, and they peaked at 5,113 metres yesterday, not far from here over in Switzerland. So it goes without saying that's well above the summit of Mont Blanc, and therefore everything in the Alps, the entire mountain chain, has been above freezing again. And indeed, the town of Annecy, which is in effect the regional capital of the Haute-Savoie, that broke its all-time temperature record with 38.7 degrees, surpassing the previous record, which was set in the crazy hot summer of 2003. So again, temperature records are falling left, right and centre. And while we haven't seen any of the wildfires in this region, which have been terrorising parts of Europe further south, down in the Ecrins in Val Louise, where I was just a few days ago, they did have a wildfire up on the hillside and had to close off parts of the valley for climbing and hiking and everything. And even though it wasn't that big, it was just smouldering away for days and days. They couldn't get rid of it. This current heat wave does appear to have peaked in this part of the Alps either yesterday or today. There's going to be a bit of a thundery breakdown tonight and tomorrow, but again, the heat's not really going very far. It's still going to be pretty warm even after this. Temperatures are dropping by a few degrees. Freezing levels coming back down below 5,000 metres, but not by much. It's still going to be above many summits in the Alps, so it's still staying very hot. So of course, conditions on the ground are changing very, very rapidly yet again. Indeed, the information I gave you a little bit earlier about the Barres d'Ecrin may well already be obsolete. It wouldn't surprise me if some of those delicate snow bridges that I was crossing 3 or 4 days ago have now become impassable. It doesn't mean to say it's going to be impossible. I'm sure the local guides would have found another way through. After all, it is the only 4,000 metre peak in the Ecrins, so that is where they make most of their money. So yeah, I'm sure people will still be finding a way up somehow, but yeah, some of those snow bridges that I was relying on not that long ago may well have already gone. And indeed, we've been hearing lots of reports of people falling in crevasses on otherwise relatively well-trodden paths on the glacier right across the Alps. This is an example up on the Monte Rosa, which, if you're looking at that area, you wouldn't think there's crevasses anywhere underneath you. It looks completely benign, the kind of terrain that people will often walk across unroped. Indeed, the person they're pulling out here was unroped. Luckily, they survived the fall and they were pulled out relatively quickly by other climbers. But yeah, just goes to show that even areas which look relatively benign and safe and will often be crossed by people unroped, when it's this hot, you can't trust anywhere, because those crevasses are lying just below the surface, ready to trip you up. So as I say, conditions are changing rapidly, and as such, any information I give you on specifics of routes, etc. will become obsolete almost as soon as you've seen this video, but at least I can tell you the state of play as it is right now, so you can make your own informed decisions on how that is likely to have progressed over the next few days. Because of course, conditions are only going in one direction now, and that is getting worse. So you have to use your judgment and combine the information I'm giving you on conditions now with the weather forecast that you're going to get over the next few days to make your informed decisions on what you can and can't climb. So, starting up on Mont Blanc, conditions are reportedly still pretty good for the Royal Traverse, at least on the uphill part of it. As I've been saying for much of the season, approaching Mont Blanc via the Aiguille-Béarnassi is probably the best, safest and most enjoyable route up Mont Blanc at the moment. Certainly compared to the likes of the Goutte route and the Trois Monts, for example. The conditions there have been pretty good virtually all season, and they're still good at the moment. There's little or no ice on the snow crest, all the rock steps are as expected conditions wise, and yeah, it's generally good fast going on the Aiguille-Béarnassi and Dôme de Miage. So if you do want to climb Mont Blanc, especially at this time of the year, then consider doing it via the Royal Traverse, or at least a part of the Royal Traverse, potentially coming down the Goutte route, or of course the Trois Monts to do the full Royal Traverse. You could retrace your steps, of course, although that would give a very, very long descent all the way down to Le Contamine, but otherwise you have got to get down somehow. If you're descending via the Goutte route, that of course means crossing the Grand Couloir, and that has become very chossy, very loose and very active with rockfall yet again. But even when there was still snow cover in the Grand Couloir, it doesn't mean it's safe. There was yet another fatality in the Grand Couloir a week or so ago, and back then there was still half decent snow cover in the couloir, which just goes to show that under any conditions it is a danger. It is just really not worth the risk, to be honest. And then the other option is to descend the Trois Monts, and if you're going that way, then there are apparently 2 crevasses which require at least a metre jump to get across on the way down. Now, jumping down crevasses isn't so much of a difficulty. You can imagine they're going to be more difficult on the way up. But yeah, if you are descending, then be aware that you are going to have to jump 2 crevasses at least on the descent from Mont Blanc to Tacle. So I imagine that means getting up the normal route on Mont Blanc to Tacle, whether in its own right or as part of the Trois Monts route, is also becoming increasingly more difficult. You definitely don't want to be considering that unless there is a good overnight refreeze, because trying to cross crevasses like that without good solid firm snow is just going to be impossible. The Putre Integral over on the Courmayeur side, which is of course the longest route in the Alps, has also been seeing a lot of traffic over these last few days with the good stable high pressure, and apparently it's still possible to find plenty of water near all the usual bivvy spots along the route. But it is worth bearing in mind that with the very warm temperatures, stonefalls becoming a risk on the final approach up to the summit of Mont Blanc de Courmayeur. Basically any time between 7 AM all the way through to 3 AM the next day, there are stones coming down almost constantly, so there's a very, very small window to be able to do that final push up to the summit of Mont Blanc de Courmayeur. And also on that side of Mont Blanc, it's worth noting that the Ganella hut is now closed for the season, due largely to a lack of water near the hut, or no water basically. The winter room is back open again, so you can still use that if you want to do climbs from there, but yeah, if you're going to struggle to find water, it's going to mean carrying a hell of a lot up with you. The Broyard Ridge on Mont Blanc, which is probably the second longest alpine climb in the Alps, has also been seeing a few ascents with the good stable high pressure, and conditions on that are apparently pretty good as well. The Crux rock section is dry, but there's still plenty of snow on the upper sections of the ridge, giving reasonably easy ascent, but it can be difficult to find water on the lower sections of the ridge. People have still been climbing the Arête du Diable, but the approach couloir is now completely dry again, and the Bergstrand is becoming increasingly more and more difficult. Indeed, it may well be becoming possible very, very soon. Moving on to the Grand Jurasse, and the casting route on the Walker Spur is now completely dry. Teams have been getting up it from bottom to top without the use of axe and crampons. But of course you still need to carry them for the approach and more so for the descent. The descent itself on the south face is still in remarkably good condition for the time of year. The glaciers pass well enough. There's not been any big rock falls in any of the rock sections, and yeah, teams are still getting down it without too many difficulties. Of course, with this intense heat, that may well change at any point. The Jurash Traverse has also been seeing plenty of traffic. The Crux rock section is now completely dry and free of snow once again, although it is worth bearing in mind the approach couloir up to the Salamange at the start of the Rochefort Ridge is now obviously also very dry and very chossy and loose as well. So that may affect your plan of attack as to what time of day you are crossing and approaching the route. And of course, that is also the approach to the Dent de Gion as well. That'll also affect your planning for that too. As for something a little bit easier, the normal approach up to the Col d'Entrève to start routes such as the Traverse of the Entrève and any of the rock routes on the Aiguille d'Entrève, that has got a pretty rotten snow bridge on it now, although there is now a bypass that heads further to the right, a bit closer towards the Tour Ronde. And indeed, all snow bridges up on the Col du Midi and the Upper Vallée Blanche are going to need to be approached with caution now in this heat. They're going to be getting thinner and weaker every single day. And of course, rockfall is going to be becoming an ever greater risk once again. After having things stabilised slightly through July, we're now back to where we were after the heat wave of June. So even on pure rock routes, you still need to have caution and be aware of loose blocks. Over in Switzerland, I keep hearing reports that the conditions on the Liscam Traverse are great right now, which is kind of frustrating as I've been wanting to do it for a few weeks now, and each time I've got a partner lined up, the weather window closes out, or any times there are good weather windows, I can't find partners. But yeah, that's been seeing plenty of action right now. And as is quite often the case, when it's too hot and too dry for snow routes here in the Chamonix area, you can still find kind of classic alpine snow routes in reasonable condition across in Switzerland, as a lot of the snow ridges up there are that bit higher than they are here in Chamonix. It's also a good opportunity when conditions are hot like this to do some fast and often indeed valley up ascents of some of the less technical peaks which don't require any meaningful glacial travel, such as the Lagenhorn and Rimfischhorn, again over in Switzerland in the Valais. Indeed, the Lagenhorn is one of the simplest and easiest 4,000 metre peaks you can do, but even that's not without risks. I believe there was a fatal accident there not long ago as well. So yeah, even on one of the easier 4,000 metre peaks, accidents do still occur. But if you are here in Chamonix and wondering what to climb in a heatwave such as this, then your best bet is probably to head up to here, the Plan de l'Aiguille, in search of mid-altitude, north-facing, shady rock routes. Perhaps routes on the north face as the Guy de l'Em, or perhaps the Lepidopterus slabs on the Guy de Payne, or indeed even the Red Pillar on the Guy Blatier. It's still going to be hot, especially in the afternoon, but if you can get a relatively early start on these routes when they're still shady, you potentially get up and down before the worst of the afternoon sun. And if it all gets too hot to handle, then you could always sack it off and go for a swim, such as here at Lac Bleu instead. You can find my playlist on the best wild swimming spots in and around Chamonix up here. If you need to book an airport transfer, then look no further than Mountain Drop-Offs. Definitely one of the best and most reliable transfer companies in the valley. You can find out more about their availability using the QR code here or the link in the description. And if you're struggling to find alpine partners or climbing partners or paragliding partners or just want to make outdoor buddies, I'd highly recommend joining the Oak app. It's a great place to find and meet new people who have very similar hobbies, interests and most importantly, skill level to you. So yeah, you can also check that out through the QR code here or the link in the description.